The biting Chicago wind was a relentless predator, howling through the canyons of steel and glass, seeking out any crack or crevice to sink its icy teeth into. For Sophia, it was a constant companion during her lonely nights. Her life unfolded in the ghostly hours between midnight and dawn, in the silent, empty expanse of a skyscraper in the loop. She was a cleaner, an invisible presence who erased the traces of the powerful and privileged while they slept in their warm, distant homes. Each night, she would ride the elevator to the 48th floor, the executive level of Reed Global Strategies, and step into a world of polished marble, panoramic views, and a silence so profound it seemed to have a weight of its own. Her twin brother, Matteo, lived in a different kind of inferno. His world was the steamy, clattering, high-pressure kitchen of Aria, one of the city's most celebrated restaurants. While Sophia battled silence and solitude, Matteo fought against a constant barrage of noise, heat, and the tyrannical shouting of the head chef. He was a prep cook, his hands a blur as they diced, chopped, and portioned out the building blocks of culinary masterpieces he would never taste. His days were a 16-hour marathon of sweat, burns, and the metallic tang of ambition and exhaustion. They were 19 years old, but they carried the weight of souls much older. Orphaned at 12 in a small town outside of Guadalajara after a car accident stole their parents, they had been passed to a reluctant relative who saw them as little more than mouths to feed. At 16, they had made the perilous journey north, armed with nothing but a shared desperation and a fierce, unbreakable loyalty to one another. They had landed in Chicago, a city of brutal winters and fleeting summers, and had been treading water ever since. Their apartment in Pilsen was small and perpetually cold, the ancient radiator clanking and hissing in a futile protest against the drafts that snaked through the window frames. Yet, it was their sanctuary. It was the only place in the world they could take off their armor. Their lives were a carefully choreographed dance of opposite schedules. When Sophia returned home in the early morning, her body aching, Matteo would have a plate of food waiting for her, something he'd managed to put aside from the staff meal at the restaurant. When he stumbled in long after midnight, she would have left him a thermos of hot coffee and a handwritten note. "Get some rest. I love you. S." Their shared dream was the secret fuel that kept them going. It was a vivid, detailed fantasy they had built together over countless late-night conversations whispered in their small kitchen. They dreamed of opening their own restaurant. Not a grand, pretentious place like Aria, but a small, warm, welcoming spot. Cocina de Sofia y Matteo. It would have checkered tablecloths, candles on every table, and the scent of their mother's recipes hanging in the air. Matteo would be the chef, finally creating his own dishes, the ones he sketched out in a small, grease-stained notebook he kept hidden in his locker at work. Sophia would run the front of the house, her natural warmth and grace making every customer feel like family. It was a beautiful, impossible dream, a fragile spark they shielded against the harsh winds of their reality. Sophia's work on the 48th floor was a nightly meditation on a life that was not hers. She cleaned the offices of executives she never saw, people who existed only as nameplates on mahogany doors and faint traces of expensive cologne. The most formidable of these unseen figures was the owner of the company, Ms. Evelyn Reed. Her corner office was a fortress of glass and steel, starkly minimalist and impeccably organized. There were no family photos, no personal trinkets, only a large abstract painting that looked angry and expensive. Sophia knew Ms. Reed through the things she left behind: impeccably tailored blazers draped over her chair, memos filled with cold, unforgiving language, and the sheer intimidating power that seemed to be embedded in the very air of the room. Sophia often imagined her as a queen of ice, sharp and beautiful and utterly untouchable. One Tuesday night in the dead of January, the city was buried under a blizzard. The wind shrieked and the snow fell in a blinding horizontal sheet. The cleaning crew supervisor had sent a message earlier, saying that due to the weather, they should finish their work and leave as soon as possible. But by the time Sophia had finished her section, the storm had intensified into a full-blown whiteout. The trains were suspended, the buses were not running. She was trapped on the 48th floor, a lonely castaway on a sea of snow and darkness. To pass the time, she decided to do a deep clean of Ms. Reed's office, a task she usually saved for the end of the week. She polished the vast desk until it reflected the glittering city lights below like a dark mirror. She meticulously dusted the shelves, careful not to disturb the precise arrangement of business journals. As she knelt to clean the base of the large desk, her hand brushed against something tucked away in the deep recess of the knee-hole. It was a small, leather-bound journal, its dark green cover smooth and unadorned. It must have slipped from Ms. Reed's briefcase. Sophia knew she should leave it. Her job, her very survival, depended on her being invisible, on touching nothing she wasn't supposed to. But she was bored and stranded, and a flicker of curiosity got the better of her. She told herself she would just look at the cover, feel the expensive leather. But her fingers found the ribbon bookmark, and before she could stop herself, the journal fell open. The page was filled with elegant, sharp handwriting. It wasn't a diary of personal thoughts, but a ledger of strategy. She saw the name of a rival company, Miller Thompson, a well-known Chicago-based manufacturing firm. Sophia had heard of them. They were known for being a family-owned company that treated their employees exceptionally well. What she read next made the blood drain from her face. Ms. Reed's notes detailed a ruthless, meticulous plan for a hostile takeover. But it went far beyond corporate maneuvering. Sophia read on, her horror growing with every line. The plan hinged on blackmail. Ms. Reed had somehow uncovered deeply personal information about the CEO of the rival company, a man named David Miller. The journal detailed a plan to confront him with this information, something to do with his teenage son's hidden struggles with addiction and mental health, and threatened to leak it to the press unless he agreed to a buyout at a devastatingly low price. It was a plan built on the foundation of pure, unadulterated cruelty. The journal didn't just talk about stock prices and market shares. It spoke of leveraging emotional vulnerabilities and maximizing psychological pressure. It was a blueprint for destroying a man's family to steal his company. Sophia felt a wave of nausea. She knew what it was like to be helpless, to have your life torn apart by forces beyond your control. The cold, calculated cruelty documented in the journal felt deeply, personally vile. Her heart pounded in her chest. A war raged within her. The voice of fear, the one that had been her constant companion for years, screamed at her to put the journal back, to forget she ever saw it, to run and hide. Getting involved was a death sentence. A woman like Evelyn Reed would crush them without a second thought. She would have them deported, or worse. The risk was unimaginable, but another voice, a quieter one, the voice that sounded like her mother's, whispered of dignity and decency. How could she know this and do nothing? How could she stand by while one family's life was systematically destroyed for profit? The part about targeting a man's child was what she couldn't shake. It felt like a sacrilege. Her shift ended as the storm began to subside in the pre-dawn hours. In a moment of terrifying, decisive action, Sophia slipped the green leather journal into her worn backpack. The weight of it felt like a stone, pulling her down, as she stepped out into the cold, clean air of the newly fallen snow. When Sophia finally got home, Mateo was asleep, his lanky frame curled on their lumpy sofa because he knew she'd want the bed after such a long night. She couldn't wake him. She sat at their small kitchen table, the journal lying in front of her like an unexploded bomb. She stared at it for over an hour, her mind a maelstrom of fear and indecision. When Mateo finally stirred, he saw the look on her face and was instantly awake. "Soph, what is it? What happened?" he asked, his voice thick with sleep and concern. Wordlessly, she pushed the journal across the table. He picked it up, his brow furrowed in confusion. "What is this?" "I found it. At work." "In her office," Sophia whispered. "Read it." Matteo opened the journal. He read for a long time, his expression shifting from confusion to disbelief, and finally to a pale, tight-lipped horror. He closed it and looked at his sister, his eyes wide with a fear she had not seen in them since they were children, huddled in the back of a sweltering truck, crossing the border. "You have to take it back," he said, his voice low and urgent. "Right now. Go back and put it exactly where you found it and pray to God she doesn't know it was gone." "I can't," Sophia replied, her voice trembling but firm. "Matteo, did you read what she plans to do? To that man, to his son? She's going to ruin them. She's going to destroy hundreds of jobs when she takes over that company. It's evil." "It's not our fight," Matteo shot back, his voice rising. He stood up and began to pace their tiny kitchen, his agitation palpable. "Sophia, do you have any idea who this woman is? Reed Global is massive. She's not just rich, she's powerful. People like her, they don't get in trouble. They make trouble for people like us. This is the kind of attention that gets us deported. This is everything we've spent our lives avoiding. So we just let it happen?" Sophia challenged, her own voice gaining strength. "We stand by and watch her destroy a family because we're scared? What about all the things Mama taught us? About dignity? About doing the right thing, even when it's hard?" "Doing the right thing doesn't keep a roof over our head," Matteo said, running his hands through his hair in desperation. "Doing the right thing doesn't get us our papers or pay for our restaurant. Surviving is the right thing. Protecting each other is the right thing. This," he said, pointing a shaking finger at the journal, "this is suicide. We should burn it, right now, and forget this ever happened." Their argument went on for hours, a painful, circular debate that pitted his pragmatism against her morality, his fear against her conscience. They had never been so at odds. For Matteo, the journal was a threat to the only thing that mattered: their shared survival. For Sophia, remaining silent was a betrayal of everything she believed in. Meanwhile, in her penthouse apartment overlooking Lake Michigan, Evelyn Reed was beginning her day. As she reached into her briefcase for her journal, her hand met with empty space. A flicker of annoyance crossed her face, which quickly morphed into a cold, controlled fury. She never misplaced things. Ever. She conducted a swift, methodical search of her apartment and her car. It was gone. Her mind immediately flew to her office. She didn't believe in coincidences. She picked up her phone and made 2 calls. The first was to the manager of the commercial cleaning company that serviced her building. "I want the name and file of every person who was on the 48th floor last night," she said, her voice like ice. "Immediately." The second call was to a private investigator, a discreet and ruthless man she kept on retainer for just such occasions. "I've had a security breach," she said. "I want it handled, quietly and completely." The hunt had begun. The next few days were excruciating for the twins. The unspoken tension hung between them like a shroud. Matteo was jumpy and irritable, starting at every sound, convinced that every passing police car was for them. Sophia was racked with guilt for bringing this danger into their lives, but her conviction did not waver. The journal remained hidden beneath a loose floorboard in her closet. The pressure at their jobs mounted. Matteo's sous chef at Aria seemed to be riding him harder than ever, finding fault with every task. The kitchen, once a place where he could lose himself in his work, now felt like a pressure cooker. At the office building, Sophia felt the change immediately. The cleaning supervisor, a man who usually barely acknowledged her, pulled her aside and questioned her intensely about the night of the storm. "Did you see anything unusual? Did you speak to anyone? Are you sure you locked up properly?" Sophia played dumb, her heart hammering in her chest, but she knew she was now a person of interest. They knew they were running out of time. One evening, after another tense, mostly silent dinner, Sophia finally broke. "We can't just sit here and wait for them to find us," she said, her voice filled with a desperate resolve. Burning it won't make us safe. She'll still be looking for it. The only way to protect ourselves is to make sure the information gets out, but in a way that doesn't lead back to us. Mateo stopped pacing. What are you suggesting? We have to get the journal to him, she said. To David Miller, the man she's targeting. He's the only one who can fight her. If he has this, he can protect himself, and he can stop her. Mateo stared at her, the sheer audacity of the idea staggering him. How? How in God's name are we supposed to do that, Sophia? Do we just walk up to the front desk of his company and say, "Hi, we're two undocumented nobodies, and we have the secret diary of your corporate nemesis. They'll call security before we finish the sentence." He was right. It was an impossible challenge. They were ghosts. How could ghosts deliver a message to a king? They spent another sleepless night brainstorming, discarding one impossible plan after another. They couldn't mail it. It was too easy to trace, too impersonal. He might dismiss it as a prank. They couldn't go to the police. That was a one-way ticket to a detention center. Then Mateo had a flicker of an idea. It was a long shot, a wild gamble, but it was the only card they had to play. "Mr. Miller," he said slowly, his mind racing. "He comes into the restaurant, into Aria." Sophia looked at him. "What?" "He's a regular," Mateo continued, the idea taking shape. "A big-time foodie. He loves Chef Antoine's cooking. They know each other. They talk sometimes." "So you're going to walk out of the dish pit and hand it to him while he's eating his risotto?" Sophia asked, the sarcasm barely masking her desperation. "No," Mateo said. "But maybe I can get a message to him, through the chef." The head chef at Aria, Chef Antoine, was a tempestuous, brilliant Frenchman who terrorized his kitchen staff. But he had a strange soft spot for Mateo. He had seen the boy's raw talent, his incredible work ethic, and the passion in his eyes. He often gave Mateo small, informal lessons, showing him a new knife technique or letting him taste a complex sauce, moments that were the highlight of Mateo's grueling days. There was a fragile, unspoken bond of mentorship between them. It was the only leverage they had. The next day, Mateo went to work with a knot of pure dread in his stomach. He waited for the right moment, after the chaotic lunch rush had subsided. He found Chef Antoine in his small office, going over invoices. Mateo's heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. "Chef?" he began, his voice barely a whisper. Chef Antoine looked up, annoyed. "What is it, Mateo? I am busy." "I need your help, Chef. It's a matter of life and death." The words sounded overly dramatic, but they were true. The chef raised a skeptical eyebrow. "Life and death? Are you in trouble with a loan shark?" "No, Chef. It's not for me. It's for someone else. One of your customers, Mr. David Miller." That got Antoine's attention. He put down his pen. "What about Mr. Miller?" Mateo knew he couldn't tell him the whole truth. It was too risky, too insane. He chose his words carefully. "I have some information. Information that he needs to see, urgently. It's about his company, his family. Someone is trying to hurt them very badly. I cannot go to the police. They won't listen to me. But I know he listens to you. I know he respects you." Chef Antoine studied Mateo's face, searching his eyes. He saw no deceit, only a profound, desperate sincerity. He had seen Mateo work for over a year, had seen his honesty and his quiet pride. He made a decision. "Mr. Miller has a reservation for tomorrow night. Table 7, 8 o'clock. I will tell him that a trusted member of my staff has something of great importance for him. I will arrange for you to have 5 minutes with him in the wine cellar." "But Mateo," he said, his voice dropping to a serious tone. "If this is some kind of trick, if you embarrass me or my restaurant, you will not just be fired. You will wish you had never been born. Do you understand?" "I understand, Chef." Matteo said, a wave of gratitude and terror washing over him. Thank you. The meeting was set. The next 24 hours were the longest of the twins' lives. Sophia retrieved the journal, wrapping it carefully in a plain cloth. They rehearsed what Matteo would say 100 times. That night, Matteo dressed in his cleanest, though still worn clothes. He felt Sophia's hand on his shoulder before he left. Be careful, she whispered. Always, he replied. At the restaurant, the atmosphere was electric with tension only he could feel. At 8 o'clock, Mr. Miller arrived with his wife. Matteo watched them from the shadows of the kitchen, his heart a frantic drum. Half an hour into their meal, Chef Antoine gave him a subtle nod. It was time. The chef led Mr. Miller away from his table under the pretense of showing him a rare vintage. He guided him to the quiet, cool wine cellar in the basement and left him there. A moment later, Matteo slipped in, closing the door behind him. David Miller was a man in his 50s, with a kind face and tired eyes. He looked at Matteo with polite curiosity. Chef Antoine said you had something for me? Matteo's hands were shaking as he unwrapped the journal and held it out. Mr. Miller, he said, his voice unsteady. My name is Matteo. I'm sorry to disturb you. I work here. I believe this belongs to a woman named Evelyn Reed. I think you need to see what's inside. Mr. Miller's expression changed at the mention of Reed's name. A look of wariness crossed his face. He took the journal and opened it. He read the first page, then the second. The color drained from his face. He sank onto a nearby crate of wine, his eyes scanning the pages with a look of dawning horror. He read the part about his son, and a muscle in his jaw clenched. When he finally looked up at Matteo, his eyes were filled with a mixture of shock, fury, and a dawning understanding of the risk this young man had just taken. Where did you get this? He asked, his voice a low growl. My sister, Matteo said simply. She found it. We didn't know what to do. We were afraid. But we couldn't. We couldn't let her do that. To you. To your son. David Miller stood up. He looked at Matteo, really looked at him, and saw not just a kitchen worker, but a young man of extraordinary courage. You and your sister, he said, his voice thick with emotion. You have just done me a service I can never repay. You have no idea what you have prevented. He placed a hand on Matteo's shoulder. I will handle this. And I promise you, I will not forget what you've done. You will be protected. The next day, the world of Chicago's corporate elite was shaken to its core. At a scheduled quarterly meeting for the board of Reed Global, David Miller made an unexpected appearance. In front of her entire board of directors, he calmly and systematically exposed Evelyn Reed's plot, using her own handwritten words from the journal as undeniable proof. He revealed the blackmail, the illegal strategies, the sheer malice of her intent. The fallout was swift and brutal. The board, terrified of the legal and financial repercussions, immediately moved to terminate her position. News of the scandal leaked to the financial press by the end of the day. Evelyn Reed's empire, built on a foundation of fear and intimidation, crumbled in a matter of hours. Her career was over. She was facing a barrage of lawsuits and a federal investigation. Her private investigator, who had just managed to get a positive ID on Sophia from the cleaning company's files, received an abrupt call to terminate his investigation, just as he was preparing to make his move. A week later, David Miller arranged to meet the twins. He didn't summon them to his office. He met them at a small, quiet coffee shop in their own neighborhood. He was a man transformed, the weight of the threat lifted, his gratitude immense. He offered them a check, a reward so large it would have solved all their problems and funded their dream 100 times over. To his surprise, they politely but firmly refused. We didn't do it for money, sir, Sophia said softly. We did it because it was the right thing to do. Miller looked at these two young people, at their quiet pride and unbreakable integrity. And he felt a profound sense of humility. He knew they were right. A check was an insult to the moral courage they had shown. So he offered them something far more valuable. "You're right," he said. "You deserve more than money. You deserve a future. You deserve to live without fear." He put the full force of his considerable power and influence to work. His team of high-powered immigration lawyers took on their case. He personally sponsored them for legal residency, writing a long, passionate letter to the immigration authorities detailing their heroic act in preventing a massive corporate crime and saving his family from ruin. He called in favors from senators and congressmen he had known for years. 6 months later, 2 envelopes arrived at their small apartment. They were not deportation notices. They were green cards. They were legal. They were free. But David Miller didn't stop there. He remembered what Mateo had told him about their dream. He became their first and primary investor. He helped them navigate the labyrinth of loans, permits, and licenses. He found them the perfect location, a cozy brick-walled space on a corner in a rapidly growing neighborhood. The final scene of their struggle was not one of fear or desperation, but one of joyous, chaotic celebration. It was the grand opening of Cocina de Sofia y Mateo. The small restaurant was packed with people. Chef Antoine was there, beaming with pride, sampling one of Mateo's dishes and declaring it magnifique. David Miller and his family, including his son, who was now healthy and smiling, occupied the best table in the house. The air was filled with music, laughter, and the incredible aroma of food made with love. Sophia moved through the room, her smile lighting up the space, her warmth making every person feel welcome. And in the kitchen, Mateo, wearing his own clean white chef's jacket, was finally in his element, not scraping the remnants of other people's meals, but creating his own. They were no longer ghosts. They were home. They had faced down the dragon of fear and had won, not with power or money, but with the simple, unshakable conviction that even in the darkest, coldest of nights, a single spark of decency could light up the world. What a powerful story of courage and integrity. What do you think about the choice the twins made? Would you have taken the same risk in their position? Did Evelyn Reed get what she deserved? We would love to read your thoughts in the comments. Please, also tell us your age and what city you are watching from. Has there ever been a time in your life when you had to choose between your safety and doing the right thing? Your stories inspire us all.